brain start with the major parts of the brain. You have the cerebrum, the cerebellum are the two balls on the back, also called the little brain. And then you have the pons up here, this bump. The medulla is right below it. And then internally, you can see your medulla, pons, and then the midbrain, which is the top part of the pink stem. Okay. We have with the cerebrum has two hemispheres, two sides to it. They're separated by that longitudinal fissure. That's this big fissure down here that separates them. And the cerebrum have raised areas, which are the gyrus, and dips, which are the sulcus. And that increases the surface area. We have 4 external lobes. You have your frontal lobe, your parietal lobe, your occipital lobe in the very back, and then the temporal lobes on each side, just like the bones of the skull. And then you have one other lobe. It's called the insula, and that is hidden hidden internally right there. That's your insula. So it's broken. You gotta fix it for me. Stick that back together. All right, with your frontal lobe to your parietal lobe, they're separated by this giant crack here. This is the central sulcus. And with the central sulcus, the frontal lobe, at the very back of the frontal lobe, in front of the central sulcus, is the primary motor cortex, and behind it is the primary somatosensory cortex. Then we have the lateral sulcus separating the temporal from the top two, the frontal and the parietal. The other one you don't have to know. Okay. So we are up to, well, if you turn this over, you can see the olfactory bulbs at the end of the olfactory nerves. And the optic chiasm, which isn't great here, is the X. Use that picture for the optic chiasm because that's easier to see it. There you go. She's just big fan. All right, with this, and you can see it both external or internal. You can see the pituitary gland with the infundibulum. I would probably be more likely to ask you that when it's open and show you the pituitary gland is a little bit. Pituitary gland, the infundibulum. That's hanging off the hypothalamus. And right behind the pituitary gland in the corner here of the brain stem, this is in front of the brain stem, we have number 24, the little mammillary bodies. On the back of the brain stem, we are going to have your pineal gland, which is 23, and then 13 is the superior colliculi, and the inferior colliculi is right below it, and those together are called the corpora quadrigemina, right? Which means body of 4. Again, we have the pons on, if you look at it this way, the medulla, the cerebellum. Externally, your cerebellum, there are 2 hemispheres, just like there is with the cerebrum. The cerebellum is separated by the vermis. That's comparable to the longitudinal fissure of the cerebrum. Your cerebrum, remember, has the raised gyrus and the dips, the sulcus. On the cerebellum, you have wrinkles, which are called folia. But they have 2 different hemispheres, similar. Then we go to inside here. If we separate a brain, oh, that fell off, so we'll use that. You can see on the cerebrum, you can see the cerebral cortex, which on this brain is kind of a pinky looking color. And then the white matter is internal. The cortex is gray matter. Okay. Just so you can identify it. So this brain keeps falling apart, huh? Shouldn't have stole this one, I should have stole a different one. Okay. Then we have, okay, if I separate it in half, or I can use this, the corpus callosum. And with the callosum, on this one, right below the corpus callosum, here's my corpus callosum, we have an area that is an empty space, which is where your lateral ventricle is found. Then below that, we have a band of white tissue called the fornix. This side doesn't show the space because it's got the tissue on it, but it shows a much nicer fornix. So callosum, corpus callosum, this would be where the lateral ventricle would be, and this is where the fornix is. Okay. Then you're going to go down below those areas, and we're going to talk about your diencephalon. But I want you to know hypothalamus, thalamus, epithalamus, okay, on that. So looking at this structure right in here is your thalamus. Okay, on this it looks a little bigger. Thalamus, it's got the little dot in the middle. That's called the intermediate mass of the thalamus, middle mass. This one's white. Then hanging off the thalamus, we have a triangular structure, and that is your hypothalamus. That's below the thalamus. And hanging off that is my triangular, will be my pituitary gland. So the pituitary hangs off the hypothalamus. Then you have on top of the thalamus, which this was all in one picture, okay, you have the epithalamus, which is the white line there. And the white line goes to the pineal gland, which is 23. Okay. So you've got all, and living inside that is, the whole area of the thalamus is where the third ventricle is located. Then your third ventricle will be connected to your fourth ventricle, which is between the cerebellum and the stem of the brain, and is connected by this little canal called the cerebral aqueduct. Okay. So with the ventricles, your lateral is going to be up here. There's two of them, one on each side. They both drain into the third ventricle, which lives in the thalamus, and the thalamus will then drain down to the fourth ventricle by the cerebellum and pons, and that drains by the cerebral aqueduct. Okay. Okay, we did all of that. We did it all. Okay, we did it all. Except for the inside of the cerebellum, we have the white matter, which is the arbor vitae. It looks like a tree, and that means tree of life. And then the brown material around it is the gray matter, and that's the cortex, cerebellar cortex. Okay, that's it.